Kentucky Ancestors is brought to you with support from the Kentucky Historical Society Foundation.
On today's episode of Kentucky Ancestors, we'll trace one family's historical connections to the first Kentucky Derby winner. Our story comes to us from Woodford County in the beautiful bluegrass region of the Commonwealth. Join us as we reveal the details and special research methods that experts at the Kentucky Historical Society used to document this story. Kentucky Ancestors starts now. Welcome to our third episode of our second season of Kentucky Ancestors, presented by the Kentucky Historical Society and filmed before a live studio audience of folks just like you who are interested in learning more about their Kentucky families. I'm your host, Heather French Henry. Join us as we reveal Kentucky's deep and diverse roots, one family at a time. Today, our researchers untangle a Kentucky family's Irish connection to Henry Price McGrath, the owner of the first Kentucky Derby winner, Aristides. And joining me today in the studio, we have a lovely mother-daughter combo here. We have Elizabeth West and her daughter Lena. So nice to have you all here. And you actually asked if Elizabeth's paternal grandmother, Nora McGrath, was related to the famed Kentucky Derby winner. So welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I do have to ask you, though, as a mother-daughter sort of combo, who is the most passionate about genealogy? Is this a duo effort?
It's a duo effort. I started years ago before you had any ancestry program and you had to go to the library, look up newspapers, whatever. And then Lena became interested and she kind of took over, and I stand in the background and say, look up this, look up that.
So you take direction well.
Right, I do.
And she loves it. She loves to dig.
Absolutely.
So that makes it fun.
Now, have you brought some family and friends here with you today?
Yes, I have my sister,
Oh, very nice. They're in the front row. Oh, there
Dottie,
you
and
are.
my nephew, Rafe.
Excellent. Now, are they involved as well in any sort of genealogical research?
No, but we're working on it.
You heard that. You're going to have some homework coming up. Well, we're so glad to have you here. And this is a really great, even not just a family story, but a Kentucky story, which is really awesome. So the very first Kentucky Derby was held in Louisville in May 17th, 1875 at Churchill Downs. Mr. McGrath's horse, Aristides, was ridden by the famed African-American jockey, Oliver Lewis. So just why did Elizabeth think they might be related? Well, not only do the families share the same last name, but they were both of Irish origin and at one time called Woodford County home. Is this just a coincidence, or is there a cousin connection waiting to be revealed? So Elizabeth's grandmother, Nora, was born in 1874, just 1 year before the Kentucky Derby. Her parents were Philip and Mary McGrath of Woodford County. 5 years later, in 1879, her father Philip died. In 1882, her mother Mary also passed away, leaving 8 children orphaned, including 8-year-old Nora, which, what a devastating story. Very interesting connections. Can you tell us anything more about your family, Elizabeth?
Well, we haven't really been able to trace the McGraths that much back in Ireland because that's where Philip came from, and so we've just stuck right there at that era. We've not been able to trace her brothers and sisters except for 2 sisters. And so it's very interesting.
So do you have any family stories that had been shared with you about H.P. McGrath over the years, or is this something that you just thought, hey, maybe we are related?
That's exactly it. I thought, hey, it's too coincidental where everybody lived.
Okay, and where they came from.
Right, even though the years are a great distance. I felt Woodford County is where a lot of people were given land, a lot of men, when they served in wars and stuff, and so I thought maybe it might be.
Well, we're going to dive a little bit into this. So let's take a brief look at Henry Price McGrath's family, which is fairly well documented, of course, great Kentucky story. Besides his Kentucky Derby win, McGrath was known as the noted turfman. and the Laird of McGrathiana. So just think Cynthiana McGrathiana, right? The Laird of McGrathiana. What a great title. McGrath was born in 1814 in Jessamine County to Terrence McGrath. Sometime during Henry's youth, his family moved to Woodford County, where he apprenticed as actually a tailor. He later partnered with W.H. Smithers to form the Versailles Company, Smithers and McGrath. But this career path was upended, of course, when he took a trip to New Orleans and he won a large sum of money. Guess what? Betting on the races, right? So H. Price McGrath grew into a larger-than-life local personality. He invested heavily in horses and raced them at tracks all across the country. After he won the Travers Cup at Saratoga, New York, he often filled the trophy full of champagne when visitors came calling at his 500-acre Lexington farm, which was called McGrathiana. So as McGrath traveled to New Orleans and New York, raced his horses, and gambled heavily, his network of friends and business partners included many prominent men from Central Kentucky. So before our first commercial break, let's listen to Chris Goodlett of Kentucky Derby Museum in Louisville to get a better understanding of horse racing industry during this time.
Well, the first Kentucky Derby was in 1875. The track's name at the time was the Louisville Jockey Club, later to be known as Churchill Downs. They were very intentional about the first Kentucky Derby. They wanted it to be special. They wanted it to be a big deal. One of the major reasons for the creation of the first Kentucky Derby was the Civil War and the devastation to the thoroughbred breeding industry that came about because of that. Founder of our track was Meriwether Lewis Clark Jr. He didn't know a whole lot about racing when he was offered the position. So to find out more about racing, he went overseas to study racing. One race in particular he was enamored with was the Epsom Derby, or they would say Epsom Derby in England. So they got an approximate crowd of 10,000 here for that very first Kentucky Derby. And that very first race in 1875, 13 of the 15 jockeys were African American. Oliver Lewis won that race aboard Aristides. McGrath, the owner, had a second horse named Chesapeake that was really the favorite for that year's Kentucky Derby. Aristides was kind of seen as the rabbit, the pace setter, the one that would kind of set the pace so Chesapeake could win at the end. Aristides and Oliver Lewis had other plans. Oliver Lewis would win some other races for McGrath, but he was 19 years old at the time of that Kentucky Derby win in 1875. It was the only time he would ride in the Kentucky Derby. Eventually, he would move on. Once McGrath passed away, he stopped working for McGrath. McGrath's estate was settled. He at one point moved to Ohio to do some work. He was apparently a bookmaker, which was a legal profession at the time. It is said that he also had acumen to create race charts, some of the earliest race charts. Today, we might be more familiar with them in the industry with the charts you might see in a publication called the Daily Racing Form. When he passed away, his funeral, I believe, was in Lexington. He was buried at African Cemetery No. 2, just outside of downtown Lexington. But like many of those that were buried in African Cemetery No. 2, his gravesite was lost. African American jockeys were crucial to the success of the early Kentucky Derby and to thoroughbred racing in general. Of the first 28 runnings of the Kentucky Derby, 15 were won by African American jockeys. You know, the special thing about the Kentucky Derby is, the Kentucky Derby is such a landmark cultural event. So for many people, it's a sport that they love, but for many people, it's just this landmark event that they come to every year. So the fact that we get to hold the history and tell the stories of so many people that are important to this race, whether they be a trainer, whether they be a jockey, whether they be an owner, whether they be a fan, whether they be a citizen of Louisville who just has their own Derby stories, Derby memories. Commemorating all those things, discussing all those things, putting all those stories into context is something that we take very seriously here at the museum. So we have that advantage of being able to tell some great stories, being able to tell some significant stories, but also recognizing the fun a lot of people have with this event. They may gather because they're a fan, they may gather because they have family that come here. So it's a special event for a lot of people. So here at the Kentucky Derby Museum, we take the fact that so many people cherish that moment very seriously. Some people will jokingly say to us, you're a museum that, commemorates an event that's over in 2 minutes, the time it takes the horse to run the race. And of course, although that is technically true in so many ways, we are so much more, because the Kentucky Derby is a year-round thing. The thoroughbred industry is very important to the Commonwealth of Kentucky, has been for a long time. And the breeding of those thoroughbreds, the raising of those thoroughbreds, all that is what makes the Kentucky Derby so special, and vice versa.
Hello, I'm Doug High, the director of the Kentucky Historical Society Foundation. We're a nonprofit organization that was created to support the Kentucky Historical Society and its mission to preserve and educate our shared Kentucky history in order to better meet the challenges of the future. And we do this through major gifts, grants, and endowments from groups and people just like you. Please consider a donation to the Kentucky Historical Society Foundation or by simply becoming a member at KHS.